Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, an interview-style podcast providing insights on how to lead people. Proudly brought to you by Human Interactions Australia. Welcome to Leadership Unlocked. I'm privileged to have Steve Cox, who is the CEO of Destination New South Wales. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Craig. Good to see you.
Mate, great to see you. It's been a long time. Thanks for spending some 30 minutes of your time, and we'll have a bit of a chat about some leadership stuff, and that's cool. But first, as always, we allow you to pitch the business. So let's hear a little bit about Destination New South Wales. I keep saying to you, I think you've got the best job in the world. So
yeah, look,
why is that?
I think I do have the best job in the world. So Destination New South Wales, our sort of, our mission, if you like, is to deliver economic and social benefit for the people in New South Wales by growing the visitor economy. So everything that we do is targeted at growing the visitor economy more broadly. Yeah. Our vision or our mission is to be our vision, actually, I always get that mixed up. Our vision is to be the premier visitor economy of the Asia Pacific. And so, the organisation really works as an organisation right across all arms of New South Wales government and then with industry to grow the visitor economy more broadly. And the visitor economy pre-pandemic was about $38 billion worth of turnover. It's about 6 or 7% of GSP. Yeah. So it's a really substantial part of the New South Wales economy. Our strategy takes us out to 2030, $65 billion worth of visitor economy spend. It'll be up to about 7 or so % of GSP by that stage. Yeah. And the organisation has sort of 4 business arms, if you think of it like a business, which is the way I operate. The marketing arm, which is about the brand, New South Wales and Sydney, attracting people, getting them to come, getting them to stay, spend more, stay longer and repeat visit. Yeah. And it's got a number of different arms, which we can get into if we have time. We've got the major event arm, which is probably the fun part. Why do I have the best job? Well, I get to sell the best city in the world, right. And I get to go to all the events. And so we own, operate, manage every aspect of Vivid, which is the largest festival of its type in the Southern Hemisphere, pretty close to the world now. We have almost 2.5 million people go through Vivid. It's just closed off. Yeah, right. It was a massive success. So we manage every aspect of that, but then the bulk of our work is investments in events and then helping them make them happen for New South Wales. So everything from bringing out FC Barcelona to play football a few weeks back to the launch of South by Southwest, which we announced a couple of days ago, which is absolutely massive.
That's massive.
So we do all the deals for those, negotiate all that information and bring them to life, major theatres, creative industries, etc. Then we have the policy, product and engagement team, so New South Wales government policy, the visitor economy, the ministerial liaison teams, and product development, so the teams that actually help. So if you think of marketing brings people here and events bring people here, how do we help the industry have the best possible products? So great hotels, great experiences, great things for people to do. So we help train, develop, we do training courses with small operators. About 94% of the industry is small business. Yeah. So we help them, could be getting them digital ready, get them online, help them get their product to be able to be sold into international markets, those kind of things.
And customer experience stuff as well?
Yeah, all customer experience stuff. We sometimes do collaborations. We did one relatively recently with the Restaurant and Catering Association around customer experience.
Yeah,
so
good.
It's a broad remit. And then stakeholder engagement, so working right across government. So when I first joined, we did the Visitor Economy Strategy 2030, and that set up within government a thing called the Visitor Economy Senior Officers of Government Group, which basically brings the heads of all the different departments related to the visitor economy. So we're one part, but then National Parks has got a big investment, Regional New South Wales has a big investment, Transport has big investments, and how do we bring place management? How do we bring all those parties together to make sure we're all aligned to deliver for the people of New South Wales?
It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. And then we've got the research and insights arm. So, data, analytics, and helping people make better decisions. This organisation make better decisions, government make better decisions, and then ultimately how do we help industry make better decisions? Yeah. So that's kind of what the organisation does. It's very, very enjoyable. It's got its own separate board. So I've got a very strong board of directors. The chair is Christine McLaughlin, who's the chair of Suncorp, and with the University of Wollongong, Cochlear and others, but we've got people like Rob McGeoch and Russell Balding and George Souris, and so there's a range of people, Sally Lone on that board, and then I report directly through to the Minister Ayres, who looks after enterprise, investment and trade.
So, we're not going to talk pandemic because that's still here, but you're coming out of that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Vivid was a huge success.
Yeah, really big.
So you're coming out of that and heading in the right direction, I assume. So how are you doing that? How are you just keep working at it and
Yeah, look.
keep finding ways of having different things on, like this South by Southwest or Southwest?
So I joined just over 2 years ago
Yeah,
now. I hadn't been in government, I hadn't been in tourism, so I've been a retailer all my career. So I was at David Jones for a long time, managing director of Dimmicks, the book company, for a long period of time, and various retail organisations. So when I first started, the first thing we did was write the visitor economy strategy. So literally what we are doing now, there's no surprises.
Yeah.
Anyone can see that strategy. It's on our corporate website, the NSW website, and we are delivering against that. And that has 3 stages. So it's got the stage we're in now, which is recovery, which goes to about 2024, where we think we'll be largely back with 2019's visitor economy spend after the pandemic. Yeah. Then there's a momentum phase to 26, and then an acceleration from 26 to 30. That's really based off a couple of things. The ongoing investments into Western Sydney, which is a big growth opportunity, and very much the new airport for Sydney, which is a real game changer. So Sydney has traditionally been relatively limited in its capacity because of Sydney Airport and the curfews. It's the number 1 airport in the country, but it was operating pretty close to capacity. Right now we're building that back through an aviation attraction fund to get the right airlines to come back in with high value visitors. Yeah. And then making sure we're ready for when the new airport comes, that we can absolutely take the opportunity that comes with.
Curfew's been limiting.
Yeah, very, very much so. Curfew's limiting, the slot allocations are limiting. There's lots of challenges in the Sydney airport space, but that new airport has 24-hour access, so no more curfews. 7 days a week, 24 hours, and that will open up Sydney to a much broader market than we've traditionally had, and prevent huge opportunities for not only Sydney but all of New South Wales from the visitation that will come from there.
Fantastic. Yeah. And especially being located out there, because I think that opens up regional New South Wales too.
Yeah, very, very much so. It opens up, it's exceptionally well located, opens up obviously Western Sydney. So when we think of Sydney, you think of the Eastern Harbour City, and you've got the Central River City, which is Parramatta. Around that area, and then you've got the Western Parkland City, sort of Penrith out to the Blue Mountains, Warrendilly, etc. Beautiful. So, and then obviously then out into region. So, one of our biggest challenges to break the mindset that people have, particularly internationally, that a trip to Australia is Sydney, Rock and Reef. And start to open up their minds to Sydney, Broken Hill for the Desi experience, the mountains, So New South Wales really has everything in one state. We've got the most accessible coastline, some of the very best beaches in the country. You've got national parks, it's all accessible. You've got the Blue Mountains, which is the 2nd largest canyon in the world, World Heritage listed site. You've got the red dirt of Broken Hill. You've got so really the snow in the mountains. It's got pretty much everything. So our strategy is around Sydney Plus. How do we get people to come into Sydney and then get out into the regions, spend time going to Mudgee and Orange and Bathurst and Dubbo and all the different places that New South Wales has to offer.
And it's like I've been lucky enough. I think pandemic drove it. But other reasons before pandemic. But I've been out to that 2nd largest canyon in the world, and it's just amazing. It's probably one of the most beautiful places in the world.
It is, without a doubt.
And then places like Dubbo, the zoo is world class.
Yeah, I'm going there 2 weeks.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Are you seeing Steve?
Probably.
You should be. I'm seeing him I'm seeing him this week.
So I try to spend at least, on average, 2 days per month in region.
Yeah, great.
So I'm going out Dubbo Zoo and meeting all the people in that area and the local operators and so forth in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, awesome. We'll chat offline on that one. So leadership is what we're here to talk about. Leadership Unlocked is the podcast. So you did your MBA 2006, 2008, was it?
Look, I'm guessing it'll be on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I saw that.
About I would say circa 8 to 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. Like that. And so that you made that decision for a reason. What were you thinking?
Yeah, look, I had I'd been successful in what I'd done up to that point in time, but I didn't have an undergraduate degree. So I started off at university doing electrical engineering. Yeah, right. And I wasn't a very good electrical engineer. So I used to sit in the class and look around the room and go, I'm really in the wrong place. And so when I finished when I eventually just said, well, I'm just not going to become an electrical engineer. That's when I went into David Jones Management Trainee Program, which is how I ended up going through retail. Yeah. So, but ultimately I knew if I had aspirations, which I did, to take on senior roles, CEO type roles, then you still need that foundation. So I had the opportunity to to go and do my MBA full time for 12 months. So I left David Jones and I went and did my MBA full time.
Fantastic.
At MGSM, and it was a great experience, and it was really a game changer in many ways. So not only from what you learn,
Sure.
but for me, MBAs and that kind of study is really about, the more you know you don't know, and it's about being able to ask the right questions, at least have a frame of reference for all the things, business challenges that you may have. So when I was at Dymocks, I bought a company. So, I literally went back to all my MBA notes and went, right, what are you, mergers and acquisitions?
How do we do
what do you
this?
have to think about when you go through that?
Yeah.
So it helps you there. But I'd say also that probably the big game changer for my leadership was it was the MBA that really got me starting to think about networking and being connected and making contacts with people.
Sure.
And I would say, out of lots of different things I've done, but mindfully focusing on making connections with people and building my network of connections since that period of time has been a fundamental game changer to everything that I've done. So being, good personal connections, I think, is a real secret of leadership. Yeah. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've, faced a business challenge, wasn't 100% sure exactly which way to go with it, but because I've got a very broad group of connections now, I can pretty much contact just about anybody. I can bring in experts to talk to that assist in that process. So that networking really started from the MBA. So it was the technical learning, it was the models that it gives you to give consideration when you're thinking about business and all the challenges that come with it. But very importantly for me, it's the people connections that started at that time.
So were you doing that through networking events? Because I know a lot of us don't really like that. It's all a bit false.
No, not do I. I mean, the only real networking thing I ever did was when I was cycling, we spoke about before.
The ACE.
And Sydney Swans for a while, which is where I met my partner. But no, I've never been one for sort of organised networking. For me, it's just about whenever I meet people, I send them a LinkedIn, and I make a contact with them. And if I meet someone who's impressive, I send them a note. Not that long ago, when I first started, Michael Miller came to see me. He was the chair of News Corporation. He came here to meet me. And in that meeting, he spoke very highly about a guy that he'd done work with. I reached out to that person, and then that person ended up doing our major event strategy with us. So, again, it's just connecting the dots. And, that happens all of the time. And for people when they're thinking about their careers, I guess one thing I have probably done successfully is I've gone from retail into government and tourism, so a very major change.
Sure.
And it was, not only was it my connections that helped me secure the job, because there's one story. So when I went to the interview, I reached out to, being government, the obvious question was, well, what do you know about government? So I reached out, made some connections through a guy that I knew, Jeff Newcomb, who used to be the head of, I think he might still be the head of the Independent Schools Association. I called Jeff, said, mate, I'm going to go for a government role. He connected me with somebody he knew from within government. That guy gave me a lot of information. And then, as it turns out, I went to the interview. I think it was a panel of 3 or 4. And one of the guys on that panel was Simon McGrath, who's was the CEO of Accor, now at Crown.
He's been one of my guests.
Yeah, so he had a beer with this guy the night before the interview. And the other person in my interview was Kim from Treasury, was his boss. Oh. So I could sit in there and they'd say, how do you know? So I said, well, I'd use my networks. I spoke to this guy last night, and you had a beer with him last night, and you're his boss. And so, again, it's just about, being able to work with people.
Yep.
Knowing, being very open that you don't know everything, asking questions, and away you go from there.
And it's interesting that if I saw a thread, obviously there's been massive change here through COVID, and then coming out of that, you've talked about that, but there was also the change at Dymocks, because you would have been there when everything was going online.
Oh yeah, very much.
And that was a massive change. So how did you manage that? I guess manage yourself through that, because that would put a lot of pressure on. Yeah. But how did you manage your teams around you with that as well?
Look, I mean, I think that was a huge period of time. So when I first started at Dymocks, Amazon was going, rising incredibly fast. Ebooks were going through the roof. The Red Group, which was the previous biggest book industry group here, which had Borders collapsed and went into administration. the Minister for Small Business came out and said there'll be no more bookshops within 3 years, and here I was running a chain of sort of 65 franchise bookstores.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a tumultuous time. But, you know, as with everything, I think if you communicate well, set a really positive, you know, agenda and outline, engage with people as you're working through the strategy and what you're going to deliver, and then have a really clear purpose as to what it is that we do. And, you know, I'm not like a big reader of Simon Sinek or anything, but I do think that, you know, that starts with why thing is a really
it's
important
incredibly
one.
powerful, that message.
We've all got to have a reason to get up. You know, I had a small gap after my MBA. I went and worked for another retailer who I won't mention today, who I had no alignment with their product category, right? None at all. So I used to stand in front of those stores and go, really, you know, the world would, no one would notice if this just wasn't here, and so I wasn't aligned from a purpose. And from that point onwards, I've always said I will only ever work in organisations that I've got a strong personal alignment to.
Yeah.
You know, Dymocks, I'm a big believer in the importance of literacy, a big believer in the importance of freedom of access to books that aren't just given to you as an algorithm. Huge believer in children's literacy. I ran the charity there for a long period of time.
Started that charity?
Yeah, I didn't start it, but we certainly made a lot of changes.
Yeah, right.
I think, you know, a book and helping children read is one of the greatest gifts you can give anybody in life. And all the most impressive people that I know are broad readers, you know, from everyone from Bill Gates to whatever else. They've, you know, if you have a lifelong thirst to continue to learn and challenge yourself, reading's a foundation for that. So that was a strong alignment. And now here, you know, every day I wake up, I help the people in New South Wales, and we make a really big difference to people's lives, both from an economic perspective, from the businesses and the operations, and the visitor economy. I almost never use the word tourism because it narrows the mindset.
Yeah.
You know, the visitor economy, as we've seen through the pandemic, you know, if you don't have visitors, you don't have the restaurants, you don't have the people who supply the cutlery, and they don't have the dry cleaners.
The knock-on effects.
The knock-on effects. The taxi
bigger than anybody.
The
that
taxi
actually,
drivers that get you
that's
there.
right.
The visitor economy is a really broad thing. So every day I get to wake up, not only sell and promote a city and a state that I'm absolutely passionate about, but ultimately help the people in New South Wales have a better economic outlook, and also that social fabric. You know, when I went to, you know, the Barca game a few weeks ago, we had 82,000 people, or 72 or 3,000 people there. The smiles on everyone's faces, and it was the same thing on the opening night of Vivid. I remember leaving my office here, walking down in the rocks,
down, right?
and the sea of people. Kids, older people, people in wheelchairs, people with strollers, young people, big smiles on their face, back out, experiencing this incredible city that we have.
Yeah, and it is. It's an amazing city.
Yeah,
it's
you know, best city in the world.
But I like the visitor economy concept because I'm down south. I'm down in Cronulla, and it's you know, it's God's country down there. They tell me.
Yeah,
I'm not allowed to say that yet because we've only been there for 7 years.
Yeah, exactly.
we're not local yet. But you know. We came in for Vivid. We made a conscious decision to come in. So we're still visiting. We're still visiting the city of Sydney itself as well,
right.
and you know, contributing how we could. So it's awesome. So tell me about what's your leadership philosophies? Have you got some kind of clear-cut thoughts about what leadership is and what leadership isn't? It's just not right or wrong.
I guess things that come to mind. I've got a couple of models that always stick in my head.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So when I was running Dymocks, I admired the Sydney Swans as a team.
Yeah.
You know, I thought they delivered above really the calibre of players that they had at the time. And I had lunch with Adam Goods, and I spoke to him and I said, you know, tell me what's the culture. And he got me onto leading teams. And then I worked with a guy called Gary, who worked at leading teams, came and worked with us at Dymocks. And they had a model that it was always stuck with me. He said, performance equals commitment times capability times communication.
Ooh.
So, you know, which I thought, and the communication is like the X factor. It's like the times, you know, it's the times three. You know, it's so high performing organisations have committed people. So that why, you know, people who really get why they're there and what they're doing and are bought
and how they contribute into that.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They have capability which you can build. So, you know, if someone's committed, they don't have all the capability, they're not, you know, then I'm very inclined to help them get their capability and develop them and get them up.
Sure.
But for me, one of the X factors in leadership is that communication piece. It's And there's a phrase that I use all the time, which is real conversations. And now I think people call it having a safe space and things these days. But fundamentally, building an organisation where there's a shared value of what you're trying to achieve, there's a set of shared values, and that you can speak openly about the good things and the challenges without fear of retribution, knowing that we're all here to get help the business get to be a better place. And if you have real open conversations, and someone can come to me and say, Steve, I think you've done that wrong, or you're pushing too hard here, then that's what I value. I want people to be able to have that conversation and not think, oh my God, you can't say that to the CEO or whatever else, that they can openly talk about it. And as long as it's constructive, you have those real conversations. And that's built up over having interest to people, listening to people, and and actively seeking out and looking for other people's perspectives.
It's interesting. Simon McGrath said a similar thing, actually. He said that same thing about being able to have those. You're welcome to come and have a chat to me and say, hey, I've done, well, we think you're doing this wrong, or you could do this differently. Right. But being willing and open and, I guess, vulnerable to be able to take on those conversations and deal with it.
I mean, I think, any organisation that gets in sort of a groupthink mentality, or the CEO's got all the answers, is not going to perform to its highest level. You've got to be able to have open and frank conversations, and that's why football teams do it, because they pull it apart and they analyse it, and they talk about it and they pick each other up. Yeah, you've got to be able to have those conversations, but that only comes when people ultimately have a level of trust that I can have that conversation without fear of any type of retribution.
And the Swans was driven by their coach. What was his name?
I'm trying to think of who was there back there. What's his name? Anyway, come to me later.
Yes.
Yeah. Because
they
did a lot of work on culture and the Bloods culture, etc. But again, it's just people and culture for me. When I first started this organisation, there was at NSW, there was no people and culture division, no one in charge of people and culture.
Yeah, right.
It didn't exist. So I put in place the first director of people and culture, and now we've got internal communications and we've got teams of people there, because fundamentally, high-performing organisations is all about the people and the teams within them.
It doesn't matter how technical we get. Yeah. You've still got to have people driving something. People are just moving around.
That's exactly right. And you want to attract and retain great people, and people stay because they believe in what they're a part of, and they're committed to it and they enjoy being there. We can all, particularly now with unemployment where it is, you can all get a job somewhere, but what keeps people engaged is this sense of, I'm contributing to a greater good. I understand how my role helps and assists us achieve the outcome.
How did that views of value? Your thoughts on this great resignation that they keep talking about? Do you think that is based on the fact that people don't feel like they're contributing? That people are happy to move around quickly?
Yeah, I mean, look, as they always say, salary is a hygiene factor.
Sure.
You don't want to be out and step with the market, but it's not generally the reason why people will leave unless it's in a massive step change. Yeah. It's are they respected? Are they listened to? Do they enjoy being part of what they're part of? I mean, one of the ones that I also think about leadership that always stuck in my mind, which I think was in Good to Great, was if get somebody off the bus if they're not supposed to be on the bus. So you want the right people on the bus, right? And I remember I had a conversation with Mark McGuinness when I was at David Jones many, many years ago, and I've got a lot of time for Mark. I think he's one of the very best retailers in the country. And he said to me, Steve, this is a long, long time ago. He said, my only regrets, not his only regret, but one of his key regrets was not acting fast enough to help people who are not committed and not going to make it in the organisation to leave.
Sorry, I'll interrupt there, but it's an interesting statement, to help people.
Yeah.
Not we're kicking you out because we don't like you and you're not performing. It's like this is actually in your best interest. Yeah. To go somewhere where you're going to be more committed.
If you're not on the bus and you're not, you don't want to be part of that bus, and you don't, you're just not fit, and that's happened sometimes. Then people are better off for themselves and for the organisation to not be a part of the organisation. And you have to have that real conversation. Say, look, Craig, that it doesn't feel like you want to be a part of this, and then help them transition to something else. And it's that's tough, but. At the end of the day, you have to have great people in organisations, and if people want to be there, then fantastic. But if they don't, then they're better off finding somewhere in their life where they really do want to be.
So you talk about real conversations where you want real people.
Yeah.
What's some real incidences where you've stuffed up as a leader? You went, oh, that didn't work. Like is it?
Oh, look,
is that you're willing to share? Of course.
No. I mean, look, I can talk. I mean, so many. Like anyone, you make lots of mistakes all the time. Specific. There's no one-off thing. I mean, my things that I have to be mindful of in my leadership style is I'm very, very fast-paced.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm very clear on where I'm going, so I have to make sure that I stop and have time, let everyone else talk. Don't go at that I set a pace that is manageable for the organisation as well. That I surround myself with people who are different to me also, and be very mindful of your own style. When I was at David Jones, I was always would have been seen as successful. There was a period in my time there where I was, in fact, I was in tears down here in the rocks. Like one day talking to my mum, it was a long time ago now. Yeah. And I was just like, I was really struggling. And one of the step changes for me in my career was actually I did the one of those 360 circumplexes. Inventory, whatever it is. LSI, yeah. And when I did that, I was massively high in perfectionistic behaviour, off the charts high. And that all sounds great, but it's actually not because you're constantly, nothing's ever good enough. You're always going, well, that wasn't right.
Yeah, right.
Fix.
So people can never meet your expectations.
Yeah, I don't spend enough time celebrating success. And you don't actually give yourself any success either because you're always looking at the thing that didn't happen the way you want it to happen. And that was long time ago now, it would have been 20 odd years ago plus. That was a step change in my career because it was the first time I really sort of reflected on my own style and went, okay. And that plays out in lots of things in life. It doesn't just play out in your career. It plays out in everything that you do. Yeah. So I mindfully said, okay, celebrate the successes. Don't always look for perfection. And I think the more I work, the more I'm very, very open to test and learn. Getting things done and moving forward as opposed to waiting until they're perfect. And certainly in government, that's how I work here. I say to the guys, I don't want it to be, thought through to the nth of everything. So there's no risk left because by the time we go and do that, we'll never get it done. Let's move, and if it works, let's do more of it. If it doesn't work, let's pull back. So that would have been a step change for me.
So would that have affected your communication style as well?
Very much so.
Hang on, I'm sure I've explained this to you. Why have you guys not got it?
Yeah, and to this day, I do. I need to make sure I listen, make sure I give everyone in the room an opportunity to speak and talk and and catch myself out as well.
I love that model. The 4 levels of, I think it's the 4 levels of learning, but the third level is that conscious competence.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
can get unconscious competent, it's great. Yeah. But sometimes you just want to stay consciously competent about, am I listening? Yeah. Am I asking the right questions? Am I letting people have a chat? Yeah. I think that's really
we've
critical.
all got our strengths, but we've also all got our, challenge. And particularly when the pressure's on, and you're in high stress situations, you can have a tendency to fall back to
your default,
to a core set of behaviours, and that can be dangerous as well. So I think those kind of stages in your career where you actually reflect on yourself, the impact that it has on others. We all cast a shadow. How I operate impacts the entire organisation. So you've got to be mindful of that. Now that doesn't mean I sit around worrying about it every day. It's just a mindfulness. And adjusting and thinking through, and also empowering people that report to me to say, hey Craig, give me some feedback. What's going well? What are you struggling with? What do I need to do differently to help support you to achieve your outcomes? And checking in that way. And I probably don't do enough of that either. But those kind of check-ins and ensuring that the people that work with me feel that they can absolutely have those conversations.
So that feels like something you would mentor somebody around like that. Is there other elements of leadership that if you had a young leader coming through that you wanted to take under their wing, and often we hear stories like that happen, what other stuff would you share with them to say, hey, be aware of this or be...
Yeah, look, I think, leadership-wise, I think just communication, connecting with people is probably the key ones. But the other one that comes to mind that I often mentor people with is just simply the 5 Ps. It's the people, product, price, place, promotion.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, particularly in interview situations, but in business in general, how many people don't think through the full breadth of a challenge in front of them.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everyone to have a couple of models in their mind. You've already heard me talk about performance equals commitment, capability times commitment times communication.
Yeah.
But the 5 Ps, which is pretty basic,
Yes.
has stood me in incredibly good stead in everything that I do. You know, when I've transitioned from retail to here, okay, well, what are you going to do to grow the visitor economy? Well, okay, first thing I'm going to think about is the people within this organisation. We're going through a reorganisation. We've got the structure right for the strategy that we're delivering. What about other stakeholders? How are we engaging with them? How are we bringing people together?
Yeah, right.
You know, have we got the right training? Then product. Well, you know, have we got the right product and experiences? What are we marketing, etc. People, product, price. You know, our relationship with the airlines, our partnership campaigns, all of those kind of things. Product, price, place, etc. And then promotion. So having a model in your mind as you think about business challenges, and particularly for people who are going through interview processes, is really, really important. You know, being able to just reflect on, okay, the challenge I have in front of me, most people that I've encountered will have 1 or 2 dimensional kind of approaches to things.
Yeah.
The great people think about a broader suite. Everything has multiple touch points generally. It's very rarely that, you know, a significant problem can be solved with just one thing. It's normally a combination of things working together that gets you to a high performing outcome.
Yeah.
And so I would say to people in leadership and in development, and I certainly coach lots of people, particularly in interview processes, have some models in your mind.
Yeah, nice.
When you think about the challenges and you've got something to fall back to. I think that's really important. And then also the other one, which I took from the MBA, is just looking at things from different perspectives all the time. So, you know, it's the odd thing that a mountain from the top looks fundamentally different from down below.
Oh, yeah.
You know, take the time to reflect on what you're looking at and take yourself out of being CEO and put yourself in the position of this person or that person, the minister or industry, and then try and have a look at it from their perspectives and go, okay, you often see the same thing from a very different angle.
Do you think you do that better because you've practiced it over and over time?
Yeah.
And I'm not, you know, you're not suggesting you're perfect at it,
no,
yet, of course, but I guess it is making that decision, isn't to go, no, I'm going to keep persevering at this model or this activity or this action so that I get it you know, better and better each time.
100%. And everything, if you've got some basic sort of models, and that's what it really, for me, that's really what the MBA gave me.
Right.
It was just the confidence to look at pretty much any business challenge and be able to think about it in a more full and holistic way. Yeah. So that you don't get sort of too narrow in your thinking and you take a broader perspective on what you're looking at. And I think if you can look at things fairly broadly, that really does separate, you know, a good performer from a great performer, because you're looking at it and adding some things in from different perspectives. And realising there's just, you know, you're always learning and you're constantly learning, and, you know, we should all actively continue to nurture that. You know, life is a process. You're going to get the most out of it. You just want to keep learning and go along that journey and constantly challenge yourselves and listening out for others and learning from them and going, you know, that worked.
That's for me, one of my values is lifelong learning.
Yeah,
and this is why I do this as well. It's like, well, if people can continue to learn from other people, because I think peer learning is one of the greatest things that people can do. So
which is one of those things that, you know, working online and versus in the office. I mean, so much of learning, in my view, happens from, you know, on the job, watching and listening. I'll give you an example. So the last time we had budget estimates, right? So budget estimates is a pretty grueling process, right? You sit down and you're going to be asked from any angle. Anyway, during budget estimates, we got to a point where they actually said, look, we don't have any more questions for me, as in me in my organisation, Destination New South Wales. You can go if you want to.
Sure.
But I stayed, which most people would go, well, why the hell would you stay in budget? Normally, budget estimates, you're successful, get out of there. But I stayed because I wanted to listen and to learn, and to learn how my peers are answering questions and the different types of questions and the interaction of that room, because, you know, it's a skill. And the more I can learn from others, the good, the bad and the indifferent, the better ultimately I will be next time I get a budget estimate. So again, it's mindfully making a decision like the one I made there, where I said, no, I'll stay. And I stayed and ended up getting another question, which but I continued to learn, and I listened to what other people were doing, and you just continue to build your toolkit, and you think, and you're constantly thinking, okay, because I'm going to budget estimates in about 4 weeks' time, I'm already thinking about what am I likely to be asked, what are my answers going to be. It's not that I'm not sitting down, but in my mind, I'm already working on budget estimates, which is about 4 to 8 weeks away. It's in my head, thinking it through.
I think it's powerful though. I think that's extremely powerful. I know even in some of the training sessions that we run for different organisations, you kind of know what the pushback might be with a group of people. Yeah. And I'm running a session next week, and it's like, okay, I know what the pushback is. Yeah. Let me make sure I deal with that and sort that out. Yeah. Before we actually get in the room, or at the beginning of the room. That's right. So people go, oh, okay, he actually understands this. Yeah, exactly. Let's move forward now and listen to what we've got to say. So,
a lot can be achieved by a bit of forward thinking, and again, that's at other perspectives and other directions. If I'm going to budget estimates, generally you're being questioned by the opposition. Well, what are they going to be interested in? What are they looking for? How do you respond? So it's all part of that. Just continue to build, and and every part of your career is important. And every stage of your career is important, and they all add up to ultimately the person you are.
So what do you need to do now in your mind? Because in your mind, you're at a great level. You're working with a great organisation, and I did some work with Dimix as well, and that was a great organisation. Yeah. What's next for you as far as your leadership, I guess, capability?
Yeah, look, I think right now, it is continue to develop, but give back where I can. Yeah. So I'm very happy to do a podcast like this. I appreciate this. I've helped many people. In fact, I had someone come into my office the other day who's a senior person. She's looking to make a transition. We spoke. I gave what I could help her, and then I connected her with 5 people in my network who I thought, out of all the people that I know, these 5 people would be good people for you to go and have a conversation with. And then I made that connection and did the introductions. She's now connected with 5 really high-performing individuals who may well be able to help her get to the next stage of her career. Next week, I'm going to a university training session, and I'm just doing a speech on and working with the students there on what we do, how we do it, etc. So I think, for me, it's keep learning and keep challenging myself, and I've got an amazing role which is always challenging. It's incredibly diverse, but the more the older you get, the more if I can give back, and the more that I can give back, the better.
It fills that need of contribution that people have.
And assist other people to help them achieve their outcomes.
So on a personal level, so people know you're not just this amazing, leader running Destination New South Wales with the best job in the world. What do we do outside of what's personal for you? What do you do? Is it surfing? Is it riding? Is it running? Is it what's an insight?
Travel. Look, and I do love travel. That's one of the. I think it's one of the beauties of this industry is, unlike the book industry, which could have got disrupted with ebooks. There's a core value in travelling, and I think experiencing, going to places, connecting with people. I think all types of travel is incredibly beneficial to the individual, no matter where you might be going, whether it's local or interstate or internationally. So I love travel, and obviously that's a good alignment with what I do. I go to Barry's boot camp on a regular basis to keep fit. I used to cycle a lot, as but I've sort of parked the bike for a while. Spend time with my family and my partner, and when I can, there's nothing I enjoy more than eventually finding some time to sit down and read, which is generally non-fiction. Really? Generally, various things. How does the brain work? Whether there's free will, things like that.
What book are you reading right now?
You can ask me. I'm just having a mental blank on what it is, but it's basically one on the sort of the history and philosophy of the mind.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so nice. I'm fascinated with free will and whether or not it exists or not. And I love. There's some really great podcasts out there. I think we're blessed. I think we are. You think back to when I was a kid and we used to have to go to the Funk and Wagnalls to find information. Now there is so much information. Yeah. It's about what are you going to invest your time in listening to? And, podcasts are a great way to do
wonderful,
that.
Right? And not end up down rabbit holes in
exactly
Google.
Right, but I think I like people who challenge my thinking.
Yeah.
I like people who bring me new ideas. And, I say that to the people that I work with, agencies we work with. I say, guys, I want you to come here and tell me something, challenge my thinking.
Yeah.
Take us to a next level, because that's where you get those step changes. Step changes, it can be, it's a lot of hard work, and then all of a sudden you can make that leap because one great new idea comes in. So,
Beautiful.
I guess I invest time. Friends and community are really, really important. I think when I was a kid, my dad was, my family was in the Air, my dad was in the Air Force.
Yeah, right.
So my dad's the last living member of the original Rule Vets aerobatics team.
Oh, wow.
So he was an Air Vice Marshal in charge of all defence personnel. But we moved a lot. And so as a kid, I moved, I did like 12 schools in 12 years. So I didn't have that long-term connection to friendship networks.
Yeah.
And I think now at this stage of my life, I'm much more mindful about the importance of community and the importance of personal friendships as well as your work achievements.
Networks.
I think you're measuring yourself is as much about your friendship connections in your community and how you are with others than just what you achieve in your work life. So family is really important, but that broader community of people that you're with and nurturing that and looking after that, I think is important as well.
Fantastic, mate. What a great spot to finish on. Steve Cox, thank you so much for giving your time. It's been fun as always. And I look forward to posting this pretty soon.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Great talk. Thanks.